Well, greetings everyone, and welcome again to God's Unchanging Word and this week's edition for our news, nuggets, and insights. We are Friday, July 28th, end of July already. Well, it's amazing how fast this year is going. It won't be any time at all. The fall holy days will be here and the Feast of Tabernacles. And we're going to be covering those in the weeks ahead to try to give everybody enough time to prepare for the Feast of Tabernacles and the fall holy days, picturing the return of Jesus Christ and his millennial reign. We got some serious issues to talk about today, and then we're going to end the program with some very exciting things, some interesting take back of one of God's signs that he would never destroy the earth again. Last week we talked about the Temple Mount, the attack by the Muslims, and how it was orchestrated that this would be that it would escalate the tension in and around Jerusalem, and it did. And so we're going to start our program out with that today. We're also going to talk about issues of the LGBT and its worldwide expansion now. And today what we're going to do is we're going to bring this to a national level, showing how this is beginning to escalate to make laws across entire nations, which are going to continue to bring the persecution upon the Christian movement. And then we're going to talk about Russia, how the Jehovah's Witness Church has actually been expelled from the entire country of Russia. Now, in a time that you didn't think that this would ever happen again, we need to pay attention. While we don't believe a lot of what the Jehovah's Witnesses teach, there is a concern here showing that if it can happen to them, it can happen to others. And we'll talk about that too. Then we're going to end our program with an exciting thing about God's rainbow in the sky and Genesis 9, and tell you how somebody is taking it back and doing something about it in a very positive way. So ready? Let's get into our program. Last week we began talking about the assault on the Temple Mount when it was orchestrated on a Friday, which was the day before we actually taped, and we told you how this was going to be used to escalate the violence and bring the attention to Jerusalem around the world. Well, that's exactly what happened. On that day, they had two police officers or Israeli soldiers killed, and three terrorists killed on the Temple Mount itself, so they shut it down so they could protect it. So we focused on that last week. So now what I want to do today is I'm going to walk you through what took place this past week and how how it's not going to be over with. But before I do, I want to show you a picture. I don't know that you've ever seen this kind of picture before around the Temple Mount and Jerusalem. That's the hillside that's facing the Temple Mount, and you can see the literally thousands, and I don't know how far this picture can actually go back, but literally thousands and thousands of Muslims all in prayer facing that Temple Mount. Now try to imagine what's going on here as we talk about the story. The escalation of the violence took place on their holy day last Friday, and again the following Friday, which is just this past week, we saw the escalation rise. Violence in the Temple Mount area, people were killed, and including Jordan and other nations around Israel, all protesting in the streets of hundreds of thousands of people. Now try to imagine what you see. This audience began to rush those gates to enter onto what they say is defiling their right to the Temple Mount. Now how are we defiling their right? Simply by putting metal detectors to protect people from coming into that area to kill or maim other people. Why is that a problem? Because most of them carry knives, because they've been instructed to, that when they rise the elevation of the persecution and terrorism, you'll see knifings going on, and they're actually going on around the world. So Israel put metal detectors simply to protect the people who are going on that Temple Mount, either to worship or just as a tourist to view. So they installed these metal detectors, and this is some of the comments now from the locals in the area who are Palestinians. This first quote is from a fellow by the name of Waal, and he says this: "In this battle, the Israeli government will learn who the Palestinian people are and how persistent we are." All right, so now you see a picture coming in showing the scanners that they got to walk through going in. You see the Israeli soldiers there protecting with the guns in case the violence came for the people to go in. Well, what happened was 3 days went by and no Palestinian went in, which again bringing about an anger from their people, saying that that is being protecting the rights of all people is preventing them from doing their worship on the Temple Mount. He went on to say this: we will never give up. And that's the truth. They will never give up. We know that from prophecy. He added that if the Jews thought they had it bad wandering in the desert for 40 years, dealing with the Palestinians will cause the Jews to suffer for another 100 years. In other words, they're not giving us up. They're going to go back and they're going to do whatever they can possibly do to take back Jerusalem, the land that was rightfully given to Israel by God through Moses. The quote goes on to say this: for the third consecutive day, the Muslims referred to the entry into the Temple Mount on Tuesday due to the installation of metal detectors at some of its gates, that the locals warned of dire consequences of keeping the measure in place, especially ahead of Friday's prayers. They did this on purpose, and we told you that's exactly what they were going to do. So by the time Friday came around, they had whipped up people in the entire region into this huge frenzy simply because they put something up to try to protect everyone. Another quote from a Mohammed Arar, is a resident of the Muslim Quarter, told the Jerusalem Post that the locals were willing to escalate this situation until they got their way, and he added that Friday would be a critical point, and it was. And I'm going to show you some of the pictures now. July 21st, 2017, amid tensions, scuffles break out at the Temple Mount Israel entrance. And so what they did is they began to block the entrance in their prayers. All right, they began to prevent anybody from going in on the day of prayers. If they couldn't get in, no one is going to use that area. Then it escalated into violence and riots around Jerusalem and across the Middle East. 3 Palestinians were killed in clashes with Israel as thousands protested over the Temple Mount. And that's just some of the pictures. And you can go online and you can see some of the videos. And they told you that's exactly what they were going to do. Now try to imagine this now. This is just a small scale of what's going to begin to escalate at the end time when God decides to pull that plug. When Luke 21 says that you see armies surrounding Jerusalem, you're going to see this massive wave of violence going on, that this little small region is going to bring the attention of the entire world taking place. When you see armies surrounding Jerusalem, then we will know the time is drawing near. Moving on, Sweden, a country that of peace and love. You're not going to believe this, what's going on in Sweden. The Prime Minister, which is equivalent to the President of our United States now, said this is a law that was passed that if priests are unwilling to marry same-sex couples, they should do something else. Now, we need to understand what we're looking at here. This is a law of the land, and you have the leader of the law of the land telling the clergy in their country, if they are not willing to give up what they believe the Bible says, then they need to find another profession. For example, the message I'm giving you right here today, I cannot give in Sweden without drawing attention of the government and possibly being put in jail. We showed you that that's taking place in Canada, and I'm going to show you it's beginning to take place in Russia. So what are we looking at? We're looking at things now that began on small local levels with a 0.2 or 0.3% of people who believed a certain way have got the attention of the evil around this world and has brought it to the level now that entire nations have been passing laws right underneath our very noses without anybody paying attention, without any news, without the churches talking about it, that entire nations now have laid the foundation to be able to bring on the persecution the Bible talks about at the end time. This is why we have been focused on this every single week now for the last month, to bring you the levels of growth and how fast things are changing and how the churches need to begin to focus on these issues, and they're not. And they're going to catch God's people unaware Unaware. So when you get this program, send it to your friends. Send it to anybody you know that's in the Church of God community to make them aware of what's going on. So what am I looking at here? Let's go on. July 18th again. This is gay Danish couples win the right to marry in the church. Not just in the church, but Denmark have won the right to get married in any church they choose. Now, in the past year, we had an election here in this country that slowed things down from the escalation of the rise in the movement of the LGBT movement. And I think there's a Q and there's an I on there now at the end of it, so I'm not sure what the legal ramifications is. But once, I believe now, once this administration is removed and we bring in a left-wing, radical left-wing government, you're going to begin to see the things that's allowing the persecution of Christians around the world begin to take place here. The only thing that slowed it down was the change in the protection of a Supreme Court judge right now that protects our rights. And even still, even with all of that, we're losing ground to be able to preach God's word with the freedom we've been given from the foundation of this world. We're losing ground every single day and every single week around the country on small levels. It will rise like we're seeing in these other nations, just like it is here. What this would mean if this law took place here, that on any given time, any person can walk in here and say, I demand you marry us, a gay couple. And you have no legal right not to. And then you have the president of Sweden saying, if you're not willing to do this, then you need to get out of the profession. This is pretty alarming, and so we need to be aware of what's going on here. And this law was passed even though it says nearly 1/3 of the country's priests said they will refuse to carry out the ceremony. So it'll be interesting to see how far that will go. Another thing that happened in the very same country, there's a midwife by the name of Eleanor Grindemark. She is a midwife. Now, I don't know if you've heard about this. This has not been publicized almost anywhere. On June 28th, this was from LifeSite News, priests in the Church of Sweden need to perform same-sex marriages or find another job. This is from the minister Stefan Löfven, who has told us Swedish outlet Kirkens Tidning. He compares the priests unwilling to perform same-sex weddings with midwives, unwilling to participate in abortions. You see, they also have a law that if you're a midwife and the person wants an abortion, you have to, by law, perform that abortion rather than deliver that child. So what this country now has done on a nationwide level is broken down the 2 points of the connection to God, the sanctity of life and the rebirth, where God says replenish the earth, and where God said the marriage will be between a man and a woman. The 2 signs that brings us to us being created in God's image. In the image of male, He created him, and female. And the connection to God to replenish the earth, because that's what God's doing. He's building a family. This nation has thrown both of those away and have followed the way of Satan. And those who continue to follow God's way will find themselves eventually out of a job or in jail. Going on. The Swedish High Court recently ruled against the midwife who has fought for years not to be forced to help with abortions. The midwife, Eleanor Grindemark, is taking her case now to the European Court of Human Rights. So she's trying to take it outside the country to Europe at large to see if that she can get some help to prevent her from having to do that. And if that fails, well, then she's going to have to find another job. But what have we come to as a people that an entire nation forces people to kill unborn babies? Unbelievable that you could think that could ever happen in our day and time of where we are. But we're here, and we're here now. One more thing, Radio Free Europe now. Let's move this to Russia. All right, so Russia, the Russian Supreme Court opposed the rulings banning the Jehovah's Witnesses. Why are they banned? Because it says basically they're a cult. They're an extreme group, and we don't want them here anymore. Basically, that's the bottom line. Try to imagine the Church of God being a group that's not in the mainstream, keeping the Sabbath day, keeping God's holy days, talking about the picturing of the return of Jesus Christ, and understanding that when you die, you wait for the return of Jesus Christ and the resurrection, that you don't go to heaven when you die, and you don't go to hell when you die. You're in a point waiting for the return of Jesus Christ or the judgment day. What more extreme from Christianity can be than that? Going on, it says this. The EU now has stepped in. The European Union has criticized Russia over Jehovah's Witnesses in their ban. The EU said that Jehovah's Witnesses, like all other religious groups, must be able to peacefully enjoy freedom of assembly without interference. It added that Russia was bound by its constitution as well as its international commitments to provide some such guarantees. This has fallen on deaf ears. And so literally all the assets, all the buildings and everything they own has been seized by the government. And they have been given a period of time to get out and cease from preaching their religion in Russia. What we wanted to bring out about this today is not that I'm standing up and talking about Jehovah's Witnesses being God's authority on earth, because I don't believe that. But what I'm showing us here is that the freedoms to preach God's word without interference is being infringed on in ways we could never imagine. Here, an entire belief, an entire way of life for those people, in literally hundreds of thousands and ministers across that entire nation now have to shut it down and leave the country. It's absolutely unthinkable that this could take place. So we need to continue to pray for our churches, the Church of God community, so that God will continue to give us the freedom we need to continue to preach these warnings and make as many people aware as possible. Because you see, these things are moving so fast. It's like they're on warp speed now. And no sooner do we finish taping one program and some new thing shows up that's even greater concern than what we just talked about last week. And so now in these things here today, these things are on a global, national level by entire countries passing laws to prevent God's way from going out. So that's pretty concerning, and we need to be aware that that's taking place. Going on, the European Union criticizing Russia over its nationwide ban on Jehovah's Witnesses. Denominations say that they must be able to practice the religion without interference. The Tuesday EU's comments followed the ruling of the Russian Supreme Court, which rejected the appeal against the ban. The rejection of the religious group's appeal allows Russia to liquidate, you ready for this? To liquidate 395 Jehovah's Witnesses congregations and seize their property, and the group claims about 170,000 people in Russia. 395 churches they're going to take, shut them down and take everything they own. Unbelievable. And the courts will not hear another ruling, even though the EU community at large saying that this is not right. It's falling on deaf ears. One more thing. When you see these things beginning to take place, what happens is there's a mindset in the people around that group who are not in that group who begin to raise their feelings and their emotions. The best way I can draw to it is the attention of what took place to the Jews in Europe and especially in Germany before World War II. As the government would raise its level of anger against that group, like the Jews, just as Russia is doing here with the Jehovah's Witnesses, the people in the communities also rise their level of emotion against that group also. Here was a house that was torched. The house was torched as an act of vandalism against Jehovah's Witnesses in Russia. Just to give you an idea of what took place. The home inhabited by Jehovah's Witnesses outside Moscow was destroyed in an arson attack, and the religious organization said, citing it as the starkest example of a string of acts of vandalism targeting the group ever since it was branded extremist by the Russian Supreme Court. So what they're saying is that ever since the court said that, their members, no different than the members we have in God's churches across our country here, when the courts here brand us as being some type of cult extremist group here, is that they began to receive persecution, violence, people throwing rocks through windows, tearing up their cars, removing them from jobs. All of these things began to escalate. Why? Because the government said these people are bad. We bring us to the point where the scripture says that he who thinks he's doing God a service. So when they do these things, they think they're doing things for the service of God and for their country. And so it's going to get that way more and more as we begin to see the end time approaching. All right, so I wanted to bring that to you today because this is pretty concerning. These things are happening on a national level, and if we don't bring them to you, you're not going to hear it because the people are not talking about these issues. And God's people need to be aware. The concern I've got for us today as God's people is the warning when Jesus Christ comes and you see that when the groom comes, the church is half asleep. It shows that of the virgins, there were 10 awake and they were all asleep, although 5 of them were ready and the other 5 were not. And so we need to make as many people aware of what's coming, because it's moving quicker than most people think. Now, I know a lot of people think we've got 30 years, we've got 50 years, and we might. But what if we don't? When you see things like taking place that's going on right now, when you see programs like we did with the signs in the heaven, it could be that God's going to begin to tear down the walls of humanity quicker than we ever imagined. And the things that haven't happened in fulfillment of prophecy can happen very quickly. All right. So much for that. When we come back, I've got an interesting story I want to talk to you about one man who's doing something about taking back the rainbow. So I've got a video about his venture, was the dream of his, and he literally built an ark, just like the description back in the book of Genesis. And we're going to come back, we're going to talk about that. This is a little longer video than we normally play, but it's a promotional video about his theme park and Noah's Ark. Take a look. We'll be right back.
I'm Harry Morton. I'm the job superintendent here at the Ark Encounter. I meet with the contractors weekly to make sure that all the project deadlines are being met. I came here from Greenbank, West Virginia, where I worked on the largest fully steerable radio telescope. On a typical day, we arrive here at daylight, sure to meet a list of challenges. But because of the talented people we have working here, we always work through them. We have about 170 people working right now on the Ark, installing the plumbing, the siding, the timber framing, drywall, electrical fixtures, and much more. As we're moving out of winter into spring, the work continues at full speed.
Hi, I'm Ken Ham, President of Answers in Genesis, the Creation Museum, and the coming Ark Encounter. I am amazed every time I come here and stand and look at the size of this full-size Ark. It really is amazing. And I'm also amazed too at the way in which God has brought together hundreds of talented people in a miraculous way to make this happen. What a place this will be. People come off Interstate 75 and they'll get on Route 36 and then come to the large parking lot, 4,000 car spaces. They'll then go to the ticket booth and get on shuttles. These shuttles will take them on a mile ride down a valley, across a creek and up the other side, and they'll be basically leaving the modern world and then coming up into Noah's world. And it is a beautiful drive. Now inside the Ark there's 132 Ark bays that are filled with world-class exhibits, covering lots of different topics about Noah's life, about how Noah could have fit all the animals, all the animal kinds, the land animals, on board Noah's Ark, how many would need to be on board the Ark, about flood legends from around the world. There'll be sculptured animals in cages. There'll be information on how they could have been fed and watered and waste products removed. And then there's going to be exhibits too on how do we know the Bible's true. And we're going to present the gospel, but in a very tasteful but challenging way to people. As people exit the Ark on the lower deck, they'll then go down a ramp into a very large gift shop, a very unique collection of gifts in here, including a large range of the basic creation apologetics books that Answers in Genesis produces. We also have a 1,500-seat restaurant, and eventually there'll be a 600-seat restaurant as well on the roof deck of the Ark. We have a very large petting zoo and some animal specialists who will be conducting special animal programs throughout the day after it is opened. We also have a massive zipline course, phenomenal zip lines across the valleys, some really long ones, basically about 4,000 plus feet long. People are going to find them a thrill to ride. You can even zip line across from the parking lot to the Ark and back again.
Well, here I am on the roof deck of the biggest timber frame structure in the world, the life-size Noah's Ark, that's opening July 7. And for the first 40 days and 40 nights, we'll have daytime entry and evening time entry. So go online at arkencounter.com to get your tickets. Reserve your place in history. The voyage begins again July 7th.
Well, welcome back. What an amazing structure that is. And I wanted to go ahead and play that whole thing, just kind of give you some impact. And, you know, I think about that when I was watching it the first time, trying to imagine Noah building that with his family. 120 years to build something that. Like if you visit here in New Orleans and you come to the headquarters for the Church of God Ministry International, when you walk in the main entrance and come in on the wall to the left, Audrey found us a picture of Noah's Ark in the construction phase, which just really opens up your mind to imagine what's going on there. Some of the timbers in that building are actually 5 stories high. A tree, 5 stories high, that they're using as center support. So you can imagine the weight and the size and all the work that had to be done by Noah while he's being persecuted by the rest of the world. Old nutty Noah building his boat in the middle of nowhere with no water anywhere in sight to be able to float that boat. Let's talk about what this man is doing with this boat. We pick up the story in Genesis, talking about God's rainbow in the sky. Just in case you don't know what that is, I'm pretty sure everybody does, so I'm not going to go through the whole account of Noah and the ark and all the information that's there. We want to talk about the rainbow. And so in Genesis 9, and I'm beginning reading in verse 13, he says, I do set the bow in the clouds, and it will be a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass that when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in a cloud, and I will look upon it, that I will remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. And God said to Noah in verse 17, this is the token of the covenant which I will establish between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. It's an amazing thing that every time we look at that rainbow, God from his throne in heaven, he looks down and he goes back to remember what he made in this covenant with Noah. I've got two scriptures here I want to bring out. One of them is Ezekiel 8, and showing how this world and Satan just totally defies what God has done and has taken that rainbow as their implement to bring about the sins of the world and thumb their nose at God. Where God has used this sign that he won't destroy, it is almost looked as evil, is that they take the evil and they look up to God and said, do something about it, God. You said that you would never destroy the earth again, but he's never going to destroy the earth again by flood. Not any other way, he didn't say. So here in Ezekiel 8, verse 17, it says, have you seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing that the house of Judah, that they commit the abominations which they commit here? For they have filled the land with violence, and they have returned to provoke me to anger, and they put the branch to the nose. And so it's almost like is that this entire community who uses this sign that God brought about that he's never going to destroy by flood, using that because it was the evil and the sinfulness of mankind, it's like they thumb their nose up to God and say, do something about it. Well, they're going to have a rude awakening because God will. And also in verse 18, he says, therefore I will also deal in fury, and mine eyes shall not spare, and neither will I have pity, though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, yet will I not hear them. So God's saying that there's coming a time that even though they cry to God to deliver them, he won't hear them. Why? Because there's no repentance. It's because they simply want to be removed from the evil they're in, but remain living the same way that they do. And people don't understand, and this is the point that I want to bring out right here. People who don't live God's way, who disobey God's laws, the things that bring about prosperity, and they can't seem to get out of the mess they're in, they cry to God. Why doesn't God hear those answers, those prayers? Because they don't change to live a godly way. They continue to live the same way they always did that brought them to the mess that they're in. So people need to examine their own lives, see what God says to do, and then focus on that way. And then through that repentance, God can restore you back to the way things should be. In fact, we got a little video at the end of this program talking about being restored. Going on, the gay flag. I always wondered, so where did this gay flag come in? How did they pick this color scheme? The LGBT activist Gilbert Baker was the first who created the concept of using the rainbow as a symbol of the gay rights movement. It was in 1978 in San Francisco that the politician Harvey Milk asked Baker to create a flag for the city's annual Gay Pride Parade. Baker created a rainbow flag, and it has since become the international symbol for the gay rights movement. So when you see a flag like that, you know exactly what they're talking about, the gay rights. Now, let's talk about the Ark Encounter now and see what is going on with that. In our little video, we saw what he did on the building, the magnitude of the size of this. So let me give you that background, and I'm going to tell you what he's doing. The Ark is 510 feet long, 51 feet high, and 85 feet wide. Noah's Ark is stretched an American football field and a half. It's actually almost a football field in 2/3. So it's just under 2 football fields long. And it's also the largest timber frame structure in the world. Built from standing dead timber and skilled by the Amish craftsmen, the Ark is an architectural and engineering wonder containing 3 decks of world-class exhibits. And it's actually in, I believe, Tennessee or Kentucky, in that area. You can look online to get the address. I don't think I brought it in here. I didn't even think about that. So here's what's going on. This is why I'm bringing this all out, because we've been talking about the LGBT movement. So now somebody is doing something about it. Somebody says we're taking back the rainbow. I saw that and I said, wow, this is great. Actually, I got a phone call from somebody just the other day. He says, Tom, did you see this? They're taking back the rainbow. So I'm in my car driving along. I said, this is great. So he sent me the little link, and so I'm bringing all this to you. This is what the man has done. There's your Ark. He lights it up every evening now with the rainbow colors. So here we have a man who's trying to bring about what he understands of biblical truth, and showing that the rainbow belongs to God. It doesn't belong to the LGBT movement. It is a sign that God gave us in the Bible, and that when God looks at that rainbow, He'll remember why He put it there. The new Noah's Ark lights, he says this: Christians need to take back the rainbow. Ken Ham, the founder of the Ark Encounter, told social media fans this week that the park set up the rainbow lights to remind the world that God owns it, and He has decreed it as a sign of His covenant with man after the flood. I love that. He said, God owns it. It belongs to God. And so He's telling all of us, we need to remember that and take it back. I love that. Here's a man doing something about it. He went on to say that Christians need to take back the rainbow as we do at Ark Encounters. So I don't know how we can take it back, but we'll recognize when we see that rainbow that it belongs to God. It is a covenant between Him and us. What a powerful little story of a man who's built one of the largest structures and the largest timber frame structure in the world. By the way, the opening was in July last year. 1 year later, anybody got an idea how many people might have seen that ark? We got a few people here in our studio. 2.5 million people now have actually gone to this place to see this ark. And it's getting bigger and bigger all the time. Wonderful, wonderful story. All righty, let's begin wrapping this up. Our quarterly is out. By the time you get this program on Friday, you might even have it in your mailbox that very day. Here's the cover. We're talking about a very, very important sermon I'm going to be delivering actually this coming Sabbath. If you don't have services that you can actually go to, tune in. You can tune us in on, just go to the website, to the COGMI or God's Unchanging Word, and you can get a live broadcast of the sermon that I'll be giving on America's Trojan Horse. And we're going to bring in a lot of information that we have spoken about over the last few years. In the quarterly, we thought this is the rear cover you're looking at now. We're talking about some sermons that we're going to be working on to give away at the Feast of Tabernacles. They won't be delivered before the feast that everybody's going to be able to get. So if you want these two sermons talking about 1776, the rebirth of Israel, which the world has no idea that the Israel you're looking at in the Middle East, that is the nation of Judah. That there's a bigger picture of an Israel and a rebirth, and we're tying it into 1776. So it'll be a two-part sermon. That'll be a powerful sermon that we're going to give away at the Feast of Tabernacles this year. Also in the quarterly, we have an article by Anna, who's one of our regular contributors. In the article is called Give and It Shall Be Given You, talking about the blessings of giving. And then my wife Audrey has another one of her stories that has become a favorite in our quarterly. In fact, people are asking if there's going to be another one. This one is on anger, and this is in the continuing series, My Mom Used to Say. And so people have really written in how much they've really appreciated these little articles. So this is the latest in that article. Along with that, with the quarterly, you're going to receive the card of the sermon that we plan on delivering this Sabbath. God willing, something doesn't happen. So if you can't tune in or you don't get these videos, send your card in and we'll be able to mail that video to you of America's Trojan Horse to evil that's hidden within. It's an incredible twist of understanding that God gives us, and the warnings brought out through Jeremiah, and how we're looking at the exact same parallel of the issues of Jeremiah in America today. It's called America's Trojan Horse. It's one of the most important sermons we've done to date, so make sure you get this sermon. From the website, Jeff has informed me we now have on the YouTube channel 455 videos online. So you can go to the COGMI YouTube channel, 455 videos, and he's got them by sections. He's got all kinds of stuff that you can go online to find about. In the mail this week, DVDs, Chuck Hunt, and his sermon was called Our Focus, and the second DVD is from the offering from last month's card in the newsletter, Bricks or Stones. An interesting story that I think you're really going to appreciate. It's eye-opening of information about bricks and stones in the Bible and how they apply to you and I. Don't forget, Feast of Tabernacles is drawing very quickly. We're under 3 months now. I think we're down to in the 70 days range. I don't know exactly what. We have these locations in Fort Walton, Myrtle Beach, Lancaster, Auburn, Branson, Kenya, Trinidad, and we're going to tell you about another last-minute feast site that we're just going to be associated with this year that they've put us into in Baltimore, Maryland. There's a group in Baltimore been keeping the Feast of Tabernacles for a number of years, and we are this year been invited to be a part of that Feast of Tabernacles. And I had to fly in anyway to Lancaster, PA. I will take one extra day while I'm in Baltimore. I fly into Baltimore, go to Lancaster, then I'll come back and I'll speak in Baltimore. We'll tell you more about that in future editions of News and Nuggets. But make your feast plans. Hopefully you'll come by and visit with us. Hopefully you'll make it one of these sites, one of your homes. But if you have a home church and it's in another location, stop by anyway. Come on by, pick up your DVDs, visit with the brethren, and find a home. Find a home. All righty, we're bringing that down to the end now. We're just before we finish. We have a little short minute and a half or so video. It's a very upbeat video talking about being repaid and restored. And when we come back, we'll bring our program today to a close. We'll be right back. Well, that's a little video. Little video we have there. If you've come across a video that you think is inspirational, send us a link. Tell us about it. And if we can get permission, we'd be glad to share it on in one of our News Nuggets and Insights in the future. If you are creative and you can help us make these videos that we can use for News Nuggets and Insights, we'd love to hear from you. It takes a lot of time and a lot of creativity to be able to put these things together. And we want to be able to offer videos that are not only just inspirational, but biblically correct. So that limits a lot of things that are out there that we really can't use. But if you've got that capability, get in touch with you. We can use you in the future. Well, that's it for this week's News Nuggets and Insights. Thank you again for watching and participating, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Until then, God be with you.